Welcome to In Frame's interview with Matt Martin of Black Lodge. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
And I think what I'd like to hear first is that the question I hear from a lot of people when I introduce the building. What is Lodge? I tell people about it and they ask, what is Lodge? So
I would imagine the best way to say it would be that Lodge originally was two guys with a film collection that was getting too big for their house. And at the same time, this kind of obsessive, bordering on OCD desire to try to acquire as much as possible, if such a thing were even possible. We didn't even think it was. And eventually, Lodge became a sort of experiment in film preservation and archiving that, frankly, has gone way above and beyond what we thought originally would occur. It's reached a point now where the entire community has fought to help preserve this massive collection, for the sake of us all. Which, to me, that's what Lodge has become, a repository. And perhaps the last repository for the city of Memphis, because we're dealing in a time period where the death of the video stores occurred. And although there are other alternatives, like Redbox and Netflix, these alternatives are extremely limited in their early phases. That's not to say it will always be that way.
they're also limited in their catalog.
Exactly what I mean. Like, what they have the ability to offer, we're dealing on something like Netflix, fantastic selection of movies, sort of, but in terms of older films, much fewer in there. There's areas where they even can surpass us, like, say, carrying documentaries. There's so many documentaries released every year, we can't carry them all, just can't financially get them all. And that's where it has its service, but there's a huge chunk of cinema history that is, as we speak, becoming difficult for people to find. And that is a problem in my eyes. Some say to me, like, aren't you glad video stores have died off for the sake of Lodge? And I tell them, no, that's as bad. We are facing a small time period where things need to be preserved before they make that final leap where all film is safe forever on the internet, much the way music is reaching that point.
Right.
We'll get to that point. But until that day comes, we're still dealing in huge chunks of important cinema history that's being lost.
And there's always going to be people that want to actually have that physical copy.
Absolutely.
They're not going to want to go download it off the internet. They're going to want to read the cover. They're going to want to see what it's about. Redbox doesn't give you that. Netflix gives you a brief description, but it's the death of the video store is a horrible thing, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And it's reached a point now, and we all use the internet. We all refer to it every day, but to have such classics to where you can't go and get them, from Redbox, from certain things, because you're not going to find too many films on Netflix that are really classics.
Every day, more and more old movies, 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, are decaying. And, some of them have been transferred to VHS. Some of those VHS have been transferred to digital. But not all of them.
By no means.
And, when people ask me, what is Black Lodge? It's, there is that moment where I just don't know what to say. Because it is so much more than a video store.
I've often told people, think of it as a school.
Well,
the way people learn cinema now, of course, we'd all love to go to NYU. And we'd all love to sit down with major professors and go over theory and such. Few will get this ability. And there needs to be a place where people can go to encounter cinema and have a wide range of choice in that. And I think there's another level to it that's lost, is that how we pick what we watch. I mean, just simplifying that down. If I'm a normal person, I'm going to Redbox, I'm being expected to decide what to watch while standing in a parking lot at night with people behind me who are impatient, and why not? And you're sitting there with your card in your hand, and you're basically, how do I want to commit the next 2 hours of my life to a movie? Let me decide in under 30 seconds out of 50 choices. That's just, it seems to me like, I guess if your cinema doesn't mean that much to you, maybe that's fine.
And the Redbox, in my opinion, Netflix not as much because they have a wider catalog.
Absolutely.
Because of the capacity.
Percent.
Redbox can only hold so many. But to me, Redbox is the is the equivalent of going to McDonald's for your meals.
Well, Redbox is
You're
also
limited.
Redbox is also that way of people going to get the newest release
Sure.
without having to spend $20 at a place like Best Buy or Walmart. It's get that new release for $1. You know, the here and now, the big blockbuster that just came out that nobody went to see at the
Just
movie.
in case there's
Yeah.
that water cooler conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So that's what I basically view Redbox. And touching back on, you know, when people ask me what is Lodge, I don't tell them it's a video store. I tell them it's an institution. That way, and they's like, how can a video store be an institution? And I said, walk in there and ask a question to the man at the desk, and you'll find out.
It is exactly, and I'm glad you said it's like a school, because that's, as you've heard us do on the show. We tell everybody this is a place for you to get an education.
Absolutely.
You got separated by director, you've got separated by genre, you've got separations of world cinema. You can study film from anywhere by numerous directors. You can follow an actor's career, you can follow a director's career. If you have a question, and we've both done this, Ken behind the camera over there has done this, and I know many other people have walked in and done this as well. They can come in and they can ask you, hey, I'm working on this script, I'm working on this type of character. What could you suggest to me that might be a good character study to build from? And you are, whether you recognize it yourself or not, you really are a professor of film knowledge. It didn't strike me just how much until, and I say that like that because we've known each other for a decade plus. I mean, I was there when Lodge opened.
Absolutely. First days.
And I've known you that whole time. But when I brought you Cold-Blooded in the Bag, and you watched those, and you gave us your analysis of those two films, the way you broke it down past any ego, past any sense of friendship, past any sense of loyalty, you broke it down critically as a film critic, as a film student should. And then you pointed out the good and the bad. You didn't just harp on one thing or another. You didn't take an opinion stance, as a good professor should.
That's the way I've always felt. Is in a weird way, there is ways of analyzing film and how it connects with an audience that has nothing to do with personal taste. That plays into it, of course. But
Absolutely.
there's ways of looking at film and going, this works and this doesn't in these ways. So absolutely, I try to do that with anybody. In fact, some of my favorite customers are ones that just come in and say, and I have quite a few of these actually, who have no opinion of what they want to watch and simply say, pick me out 4 movies. And I might ask for certain parameters, but some of them don't even want to do that. And I get what they want to do. And they understand something that, say, the Netflix algorithm can't, which is if you never on Netflix watched, say, a German silent film, it'll never suggest you one. How are you know to go look that up? I mean, obviously it seems second nature. Who doesn't? Somebody like that. But there's plenty of people who don't, and growing numbers, I'm sure. So,
people that are buying tickets to go see, even the Avengers, which, I like the Avengers,
Sure,
but that kind of film, people who are going to see Transformers, they don't know who Fritz Lang was.
Sure.
They don't know who, M.W. Murnau? FW. I had it right first. They don't know who he is or who he was, excuse me. And yet, in terms of cinematic history, especially with Fritz Lang, you have a very important filmmaker.
Absolutely. Critical, even.
And, absolutely.
With that,
seminal.
Like bottom of the pyramid. One of the blocks of it were missing,
and
would have collapsed.
How many people in this town, shy of a few certain filmmakers and film appreciators, how many people will really be doing everything they can to be sitting in the theater when Indie Memphis screens Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Sign?
Sure.
Which is,
me,
is one of the most important films ever made.
Absolutely.
But, to me, Lodge is, as he said, and this might be the best term I've ever heard for it, is an institution. It's a film institution, and you have created a situation where you are a very important part of that institution. You are the professor of that particular classroom.
It's weirdly took that shape. I mean, I had taught before and didn't realize, I think when we originally designed it, we kind of imagined, what is dominantly a way people go into these kind of, any video store, which is they step in and they wander around and nobody talks to each other much. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of what, after the mom and pops died and all that was left was the Blockbuster era, it felt like going to the pharmacy when you went to pick out a movie. I mean, it's sanitized,
it was-
overbright, and nobody's talking to each other. It's like, not exactly an environment to learn. And I think when we set it up, we didn't really realize that's what was about to happen. Kind of what it did seem natural.
I think what happened is you created an environment where it wasn't about going and getting a movie to entertain yourself. It was about going to find a film. Going to go deeper than just the entertainment of what a movie brings.
Something to immerse yourself into.
Yeah, exactly.
And to look at a film as filmmakers. I can't speak for you, but for myself, if something doesn't draw me in, I'm looking at different aspects of it. But when I come into Lodge to look for a film, I'm looking for a film that's going to suck me into it. I want to lose that 2 hours because I want something to stimulate what I'm looking for.
When I'm in Lodge, there's a part of me that's looking for entertainment, nostalgia even, like when I came in and got the Dirty Harry movies.
Of course.
But often there's that part of me, and this is why I rented Beyond the Black Rainbow. There is that part of me that is looking for the next film that will truly alter me as a filmmaker, the way 2001 did, the way The Elephant Man did, the way certain films come along, the way Seventh Seal.
Seventh Seal.
Seventh Seal. Sorry, I'm all confused now.
Yeah.
Seventh Son had Demi Moore.
Yeah.
That was great too.
That was not so seminal, but
Yeah.
Michael Biehn and all.
It's 9 years.
But there are those certain films that when I saw them, I realized, oh my God, film can do that. And I'm always looking for that next film. And often those are films that become immediate classics to me. I definitely want them on my shelf, but I watch them once every so often, 2-3 years apart, because, like The Elephant Man, for instance, that's not a movie you just sit down and watch on a Saturday night. But every aspect of that film as filmmakers is recognizable as genius. Every single shot is a perfect photo. The acting is phenomenal. Every aspect of the film is genius. And that's what I look for. And I know that you, as a fan of film, your tastes in film, these are the things you're looking to find as well. But you are also preserving the drive-in film, the exploitation film. These things that covertly altered film history and steered the careers of various filmmakers. Not everybody knows that half the greatest filmmakers out there started in Roger Corman's classes.
Absolutely.
And, Roger Corman's known for making some of the worst B-camp films ever.
Absolutely.
And, these are the things, this is the school, this is the institution, this is where you go to learn this type of thing and study that history. So you are perceived by filmmakers as an institution and a professor. And I'm glad that you see it as a learning environment.
Sure.
Because
I think what we liked about it was that it could be whatever you wanted it to be. I mean, if all you wanted was, a good old-fashioned action movie or something you're just renting for nostalgia reasons or an old dumb comedy, it's there for you for that. And it has that across the board, anything you could want. But
Right.
if you want to delve deeper, if there's areas that you're curious or maybe you're just hungry to see something you've never seen, I think Lodge is set up both with how you can talk to us as well as its layout so that if you care to go deeper, it's inviting. It doesn't seem so overwhelming. And for a lot of people, encountering a collection like Lodge is overwhelming because it's so much at once. But it really puts in your mind, wow, there's this universe of this art form that I've only touched the surface on, even if you've watched film your whole life. And I think that's good. I think people should have that overwhelming experience because it makes you hungry to see what you haven't seen. Wow, there must be a lot I haven't seen. To me, it's like, even if you've never thought you'd want to go any deeper, just spend a few minutes. It's an environment where people clearly love cinema, and suddenly it's very infectious. You kind of like, wow, what are they talking about? That sounds interesting. And I'm lucky that way too. That people actually want to come in and talk about films with us. For me, it's pleasant. I mean, the fact that everybody gets something out of it's great, but for me, that's all I ever wanted to do.
Excellent. Hello, I'm Jay Lazarus Hawk, director of The Bag. Please join me, cast, crew, family, and friends at the Tupelo premiere of Cold-Blooded, Thursday, April 11th at 7 p.m. Tickets will be $5 at the door, and all attendees are invited to join us at the after party at Rami's Grocery. So please, come out and enjoy a night of local independent film. Thank you.
Rise and shine! You don't want to use your tongue? Let's remove it. That's it! Your tongue's mine! Wakey, wakey, Michelle. That's right, Gary. Your buddy's here with you, too. I get to prove my point to you both. Ever seen someone's eyes when they're wide from fear, from pain? You're evil. What do you know about evil?
My name is Alex. I wanted to be an actor, but then I got involved in the wrong crowd, the wrong people, made bad choices. I became a bad actor. But then I noticed Rising Fire Productions, and they made me the actor I am today. Since then, I've been able to get auditions and book roles. Thank you, Rising Fire.
Welcome back to In Frame. Our special guest tonight is Matt Martin from Black Lodge Video. We're coming to you live from the firehouse. Well, I say live, but we are being recorded for our next show. So Matt, we've touched on some of the thing, earlier, is what a lot of people, myself included, are wanting to know is the origins of Black Lodge. Can you give us a little bit of the history, from the beginning?
Sure. It probably starts with meeting one person, which would end up being my partner, Brian Hogue, who actually created Lodge as well. We met years ago in East Memphis when we were in high school sacking groceries at Cecil's next to MUS. And just because we were bored at this job, would wind up talking and talked about movies a lot. And I don't know, right away it was like, somebody else who had a real hunger for cinema. And I'd only met a few people who were really interested in seeing a lot of rare stuff, so we just started hanging out and became good friends. When I finally graduated high school, I took off and went to Missouri to go to Columbia. And basically, he gave me a call somewhere in my sophomore year and was like, I'm bored in Memphis, there's nothing going on. It's like, why don't you come up and stay with me for a little while in Missouri just for kicks? He did. But while we were there, Columbia, Missouri is well known for having like 8 colleges there, and so it's a huge town of young people. A lot of musicians, a lot of art being made, and that's a great environment for that. And I think it was good for both of us in that degree. But in that town were 2 video stores. One was called Ninth Street Video and was like a formal art house video, meaning foreign films, silent films, classy cinema. They actually had director's sections, which I had never seen anybody do before. I was like, wow, I love this. I had no idea he made all this. That was sort of where that kind of thing began. About 3 blocks over was this trashy return to the old feel of the mom and pops, where it just like people are smoking cigarettes inside. It was dour. A place called Big Lizard Video. And I walked in there and I had never seen a section where I'm like, these are all like weirdo, bizarre drive-in flicks I've never heard of. What is all this? Like it suddenly seemed to me like I already kind of consider myself well-versed to some degree in cinema. Yeah. It wasn't until I looked at this, I was like, you don't know anything yet. This is just a universe. We, of course, spent a couple of years. He wound up staying up there until I graduated, and this would have been in '96. By the end of that, I remember him sitting down one night and was like, it sucks that we have to go to both of those stores. Why isn't there like a video store that has like all kinds of art house cinema and the important stuff, but also has trash cinema, has bizarre unknown oddities, and just things lost through the cracks of time. Being it was the mid-'90s, we're right around that time where independent cinema is breaking out, and people are suddenly going, wow, there's more than what comes out of Hollywood. I had no idea. And I think that kind of contributed to it too. When we finally decided to leave Missouri, we kind of were like, where should we go? And I remember him saying, like, Memphis doesn't have anything like these. And this is kind of sad because Memphis is huge. We had spent, our youth going to the old video stores, the dying mom and pops, and the burgeoning blockbusters, and that was all we had. And I remember him saying, like, if you could just build a collection big enough, and get people interested, they'd come in and rent, and you could use that money to just keep building the library. It would actually self-sustain if you could just get a few people to come in. And I said, you know what? Why don't we go back and see if we can do that? The first thing we ran into was, wow, we have 800 movies. That's unimpressive. And realized that we were looking at probably years of work. And actually it wound up being that. We from at the end of '96 all the way till '99, when we actually thought we might have a collection big enough. We both worked full-time jobs. He worked at Kinko's, and I had worked at Borders, and later on Suncoast and the Hickory Mall, and just everything we had, we just spent on movies, and this is still the pre-internet era of film collecting. So there's not really there's stores like Suncoast where you bought movies, or Target or a Walmart or a Best Buy. It's still the opening days of Best Buy at that point. But, there's no way to go, get rare things. It's just no system yet. 5-6 years away. So we actually spent that 3 years besides working, hunting, visiting, and cannibalizing dying video stores. We would drive around, we'd go to the sticks. We're in North Memphis, finding video stores nobody ever would go to anymore, that, are creepy when you go in. But I'd walk in and I knew my film enough to go, this video cassette right here, this is insanely rare. You'll never find this again. Talk to the manager, hey man, can I buy this movie? Oh, I don't want to sell anything, and argue. And this went on for years for hundreds of video stores, and not just in the Memphis area. Like I would leave, and go on vacations. And half that vacation, I'd be like, I'm telling you right now, we're going to like 10 video stores. I'd bring an empty suitcase to bring back movies, and no exaggeration. And of course, look bizarre if you're like flying.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell is this? Movies? And of course, it's, doesn't help that they're all like, creepy, out of place horror movies, the Gore Girls, and it's like, wow, okay, this looks bad. But,
Thank God that was before 2011. 2001.
Yeah, a little before 9/11, so it wasn't quite the issue yet. But they basically spent years just hunting movies, and we're surprised. Actually, I remember telling him like, this is going to be like 5 years before we actually have a collection big enough. And we were shocked when it ended 3 and it hit a really respectable, say 5,000 or 6,000. And this is also the pre-DVD era.
Did you not also have some donations?
Not
I mean, I know after you opened,
after we
several people
opened
would
that,
give
nobody ever gave us, say, like some insane amount, like 500 or more or something
Right.
like that.
If it was 1 or 2 here and there.
Sometimes people were good enough to they'd come in with a bin, you know.
Yeah, as I said, I gave like
Sure,
2 or 3 crates at
there
one
was,
point.
Yeah, it was many that you had given actually,
Things like that,
and
but-
thank you still. I still have the Batman animated videotapes you made.
I'm still interested if you have the Hawkwind somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Actually, no, that's in music.
That's
I'm
gotta
about to
be-
transfer all
I
that
never,
to DVD.
I
already
never
know
see it
that.
on the shelf. I think it's
That's probably because it's part
been
of the
pulled to
transfer
be transferred,
process,
but
which is,
I'm
we
anxious
can
to
talk
see
about
that
later
happen.
that process if you want. No, transfer.
But well, I want to stay on the origins and beginnings
Sure.
because like you said, people are very curious how you really came to be, and I was there early on. I can't remember exactly when you opened. October. It was
opened-
Halloween.
it was
Halloween.
2 days before Halloween of 2000.
I was unable to
Officially
be
opened.
there for the opening because I was doing other things.
No one was there either.
But
I was completely alone that night.
I want to say March or April, maybe it was May, we came in and brought Morning Ritual.
Yes, it's actually, I want to say it was the second week of March.
It was March.
Was
okay.
when Craig came to me and said, I want to do this showcase and I'd like to do it at Lodge. And which easily could be considered like in the public consciousness, the birth moment.
I was going to say,
This is the
I
first
remember
time
walking
anyone
in there.
And tied with Bifus doing an article on
Yeah.
us at the same moment because
Craig,
of that.
Craig told me about the event. Of course, I made my first film. I'm thrilled if any 2 people want to get in a room and watch it.
By the way, remember the first time I saw it that night and said, "This is brilliant."
Well, I remember you
remember
walking up
you
to me and just pulling me aside. This is brilliant.
I was like,
dude."
"This is really brilliant."
But I remember I went up there to see, where is this place that I'm going to have my film? And I walk in, I was like, okay, it's the oddest video store ever. That's kind of cool.
And you said, "I'm home."
And then I saw it again that night. And it was wall-to-wall people. And everybody in there was just fascinated by what you had built. And that fascination led to a number of people. I don't even know at this point how many. Moving through that building as almost as family.
Absolutely.
At times, being as brothers.
In the early days of Lodge, there were 8 people living in the upstairs. I mean, it was literally like a whole family's well put. It literally lived like that.
And of course, everybody ended up. There was that wave where everybody put the owl tattoo as a show of solidarity and support of Lodge.
And it was great.
It blew up. It was everywhere. So, what was that like to see with that many people, with that many creative people, whether it was a photographer artist like Kelly Cratt, or Joe Goodwin, who's to this day still with you,
Still was.
or all these people that rolled through, and to see them attach and believe in you and what it is you're building, and see the merits of that. What's that like for you, and what was it like then, and how that's built?
Well, I mean, in the opening days, I remember actually saying to Brian, like, we'll be lucky if somebody comes in the first week. I kept saying, like, when we open, just don't be surprised, because we're just going to sit there and watch movies and nobody's going to come in, because we can't afford advertising. And
Right.
And it was an interesting thing is, remember, we had left, I had left in 1992 and didn't come back until almost 97. And during that time period, Memphis went through all kinds of changes.
Right.
And I had grown up in the, Linfield Woods area of East Memphis, so I had done stomping grounds out there in East Memphis and in Germantown, and I didn't, know much about the whole Midtown scene. Past Highland was a mystery to me still, more or less. I just didn't party in there. I didn't know anybody over there. So when we came back in 90s, I guess it was January of 97, but basically we lived in East Memphis up until the opening of Lodge, so by the time Lodge's doors open, we still don't know anybody. I remember walking around the Cooper Young Fest 2 months before we were going to open, handing out flyers, just being like, "Do you like movies? Because we'll try to open a video store."
Right.
And, I kind of thought at the time, like, it kind of sucks we don't know anybody, Brian. We could talk to friends and say, "Hey, mention to these people." We didn't know who to talk to. I only knew Craig because at the time, in the late 90s, he was, still
worked together, didn't you?
no, he worked at Barnes and Noble, and I was over
That's
at
right,
Borders, and we
that's
just he would come in later on when I was in Suncoast in '97 and '98. He would come in there, and I was like, "This is the only guy asking for movies that are interesting." And he's coming in asking for really rare stuff that I have enough knowledge to go on. And of course we get to talking because of that. And
Right.
and I remember actually when he was getting ready to work on Poor and the Hungry. I remember cleaning up in Booth B's getting made and all that. And he was really the only person we knew. And I got lucky that within those first few months he was really enthusiastic. He introduced me to Mike McCarthy, who I'd never
Right.
met. I'd seen Short Losers way before, but
And of course, Mike is, one of
the
the most
man to know.
important
If you're gonna,
filmmakers in
if
this
you're
city.
going to be involved in film or even just care about film, this is somebody who's integral in trying to keep it alive. And I think meeting the both of them, I mean, still to this day, hats off to both of them from us because they spread the word. In a time when we couldn't afford advertising, they talked to people. Even if it was just over a meal, hey, there's this place.
Well, I remember Craig, when he told me that we were doing the premiere there, he said, I want to give this place some promotion, some opportunity, so I'd like to hold it there and bring people into it. Which, again, for me, show my movie anywhere, fine, I'm cool with that. But in retrospect, I couldn't be happier that is the spot that Morning Ritual saw its first audience. That was the second time I ever saw it. So I went to Craig's house, I watched it, couldn't believe that was actually the film I made. And then the next time I saw it was sitting in Lodge with so many people I could barely even see the screen.
That was the first time, really. I think I leaned over to Brian because we, of course, are like in the back of the room, over near the desk, and I think I even said, or he said, who knows anymore, it's so long ago, but it pretty much was like okay, this is out of hand, this has reached something we didn't think was going to happen. Like, this is crazy, how many people are here at this moment. And I remember, like, watching the films and thinking, we have a lot of talent around here, It surprised me at the time, of course this is, even before Indie Memphis is a thing.
Yeah.
I remember saying, there's only like a couple
Sort of
dozen
been
people,
March 2001.
Yep.
So.
Yep, absolutely. So it's like right there, right before it's all about to break out. I'd like to think it contributed into that to some degree. At least
I think it did.
created an environment where people cared more about movies.
Well, if
than
nothing
us,
else, it created a place where people who cared, as you said, got together and then shared information. So one or two people might have known about mine. One or two people might have known about Craig. One or two people might have known about Eric Tate. One or two people might have known about Lindsay. Or there was one or two other things other than those that were popular at the time.
Yeah.
G.B. Shannon, not G.B. Shannon, Ryan Parker.
Yeah, Jeff Shrewsbury's right
Shrewsbury,
there
that's
working
the
on
one.
stuff. So.
But there was a couple of people, and each of them had a few people. And they knew some people, and they knew some people, but then they'd all come to Lodge. And now it's like, oh, you know those two, and I know these two, and we're talking. Now we'll go check out that person. We'll go check out that person. So I think you did help build.
If
the
just giving a crossroads point in a lot of ways.
You
I
built
felt
the fan base of local cinema in this city, I think, by creating a place where local cinema can go. And in regards to your beginnings and origins, at what point did local cinema become something you wanted to showcase the way you are?
Actually, very interesting. In the opening, say, 2 years leading up to 2002, starting, say, with that moment in March in 2001, and in the year or so after that, I actually remember, noticing people starting. I remember Morgan Fox first times coming in, it's right around that time, and he's talking about making movies, and he starts creating a little collective.
Was this, he had the Experiment 26?
Yeah,
and
the
something
soft
else?
collaboratory
Soft,
stuff,
yeah.
which I thought was great. I was like, wow, he understands communal, art forms, and he understands the use of cinema for that. And he was, bringing people together. I saw for the first time. We actually did some screenings with them, during that time period. So I guess around 2003, by then we had actually built up enough of a following around the city that we started to think bigger. My partner and I started doing more screenings of films in other places. We actually had a whole time period where we would, any bar or any place that had a place where you could screen something, we'll come there and screen it. And we would start having lots of people come out. And I started meeting a lot of young people who were still like 16 and 17, but talking about making movies and usually shooting themselves down over it.
Right.
Like, yeah, boy, you know.
It's
and I was
easy
like,
to do.
and I kept saying, technology is improving. You know, you can make a movie. Anybody can make a movie here, and really should. I'm kind of surprised more people aren't at this point. You know, with the access to the cameras and the software. You know, but around that time, around 2003 or 4, I started saying, you know, it'd be nice if we had a local section. I'm still, you know, I remember saying, we'll only be able to start with 2 shelves because that's all we'll be able to get from the get-go.
It's all the room you really have.
And horrified to find out a decade later, it's still only 2 shelves big.
And honestly, those 2 shelves aren't full.
Yeah.
And it's painful and bothersome to me.
It's one of our pleas that we put out there on a daily basis, that all filmmakers who you put in the time, you put in the effort, you put in the blood, the sweat, the tears to make this film. And I don't care what you make, whether it's a 1-minute thing or a half-hour thing or a feature. None of it's easy. None of it goes as planned most of the time. So if you're going to put that kind of effort into it,
Why not show it somewhere?
Preserve it.
Have it
If
somewhere.
nothing else, preserve it. Put it on a shelf other than your own. Having a local section is massively important. It's massively important that we as local filmmakers provide the films to fill that section. I do know that because of your section existing, because of Lodge being there, Sam Baer is one of the people who I believe that because of Sam and who he is, might have gotten there anyway.
Oh yeah.
But I know that Lodge was integral in helping Sam Baer take shape and become the filmmaker he is.
You know, in honest
Kudos
truth, when
to you
I
for
met
providing
him
that.
as a young man, it was easy to tell from the get-go this man had a hunger for cinema that you don't see often. You know, I see all types and how much, you know, people,
Especially in the young.
and he was really curious about anything he hadn't seen, and so you could tell. We've met those over the years, and you instantly know, like, wow, this is personal. It's beyond just entertainment. This is something integral to who they are, and it's something they want to be a part of, and so, you know, I like to foster that. Usually when I spot them, you know, I'm usually like, have you seen this? You know, you're kind of touching on these, you should really see this.
And I was going to kind of summarize the origins and beginnings of Black Lodge being much the same thing for you, is a compulsion, a necessity. Something you have to do because you want good movies to be made, so you want filmmakers and film fans to be able to educate themselves in what good film is.
Absolutely.
And it meant a lot to me. We haven't known each other very long. And it meant a lot to me when I first met you and we had told you about my film and you said, bring it up, put it on the shelf. I mean, you know, Black Lodge is, you know, I live in Mississippi, so, you know, we don't have anything like that. And for you to go bring what you've made to me and let's put it up, that meant a lot because Black Lodge is such an iconic place here in this town. And, you know, even just having you watch my film,
Well,
you know.
that's my pleasure.
You know, even having you watch my film, and I remember we watched it, and then you told me, you walked up to me and told me, said, hey, can you come back Thursday? I really want to talk to you about it. And when I went home, I was nervous because, you know, not knowing you, and, you know, Lazarus going, this is the person that you want to ask questions. This is the person that
This is who you want
Yeah.
analyzing your film and
Yeah.
giving you feedback.
Exactly.
It'll be
And
honest.
that Thursday night when I came up there and you started asking me questions, and I was terrified because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But you know, you were able to give me the things. Is what would you do differently? How would you approach this differently? I like this a whole bunch. I would have waited to do this till this point, but it made me see what it really means to do things the right way. You know, you complimented me, and that made me feel really, you know, it made me feel good because I'm new to the Memphis community. You know, I've only done one film. You know, me and Lazarus hit it off really well the first time that we worked with one another. And when we formed our partnership. But to have somebody like you in Black Lodge, it means a lot to me as a filmmaker to be able to come there and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to look at something to help me with that. So my hat's off to you
Well,
guys.
yeah, that's what I wanted it to be. Was, you know, for anything you could need it for, please come inside and see what, you know, beyond what's on the shelves. Just talk. You know, if you have a movie you're working on, I totally want to, you know, sit down with anybody I could and just try to work out any kind of details that can help. No, you know, even if something's not bad, there always can be things that can be better.
Well, and I can testify to that because when I got the permission to turn this book into a film, the first person I called was Lazarus. The second person I came to was you, and we sat down and talked about it.
Yeah, because it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
So the origins really boil down to a need for this to exist.
Sure.
Yes.
Excellent.
What do you do when you're raised to be a weapon, but you're tired of death? How do you quit the past when violence is all around you? When somebody pushes you far enough, you push back. And if they're not dead already, it's only because I haven't killed them yet.
I'm Alex Wolf, and I'm here with Marthias Wade, creator of comic Tura Gun Angel. How you doing, Marthias?
I'm good. Just glad to be on set. It's pretty cool, man.
Can you tell some of the viewers about Tura? Who is she?
Tura is a ninja of the Toshigawa Ninja Clan, and she is also a bounty hunter. When she left Japan and came to America, she ended up taking up bounty hunting because, you know, that's what ninjas do. They take up bounty hunting when they go from Japan to America. So it's pretty much about her story, trying to find her way back to the clan, kind of, but at the same time being able to establish herself as her own entity away from the Ninja Clan.
So far it's been great. We kind of have a dream team of people assembled. Sona is our costume person and she's fantastic. And Blake, he's our makeup and wig guy, and they both really conspired to bring Tura to life. So it's been really fun to work with them.
You guys are so amazing. Seriously.
When I saw Rachel in the outfit, I was like, dang, that's pretty freaking, that's Tura, you know what I mean? Being able to interact with her, she got the attitude down pat, you know, I was just like, wow, that's pretty awesome.
When I was a little girl, I wanted to play Wonder Woman, like insanely bad. So the fact that it's still a comic book character, I mean, it's still a superhero, and it's a bad chick. Yeah, I'm super excited.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. I played Catwoman with my Barbies.
Yeah, see?
You have actually had over 800 submissions for women wanting to play this role.
Yeah.
What made you choose Rachel?
I wrote a couple of little short scenes for her, for everybody to read and to kind of get a feel of their range. And when she did hers, it was the best. I mean, she nailed the feel of the character Tura.
Can you dance? What? You heard me? Yeah, I can dance. Come on. What? I'll make it up to you for getting to the hacker before you. How? I'll let you buy me a drink.
So the director tells me you're already training for some fight scenes. What have you done so far?
Well, we've been doing a lot of training just so that I can really get into the fight sequences. We've done kickboxing, which is really athletic, a lot of punches, a lot of kicks, you know, which is good for the workout too. And then also sword fighting training. Getting to do it, I don't know, it's a new respect for it, I think, because suddenly you realize, oh, this is way more challenging than you would ever imagine just watching it. But fortunately, I'm able to train with somebody extremely talented and knowledgeable. Mark Chevalier, he has over 10 years of Japanese sword training. So he's literally like my go-to man.
So you've actually gotten to perform samurai swordplay then?
Yes. Isn't that cool to say? Yes. That's what I want to do. Obviously, that's not how quick I can do it just yet.
I've also been told that you have had gun training for a previous role. Is that true?
I had the lead in an independent feature film called Officer Down. They gave me a nice little training session and I loved it, loved it. So getting to do that again, it just, I don't know, there's something empowering about it.
That's right.
You're trying to raise money to shoot the opening scene of the feature. What happens in the opening scene?
In the opening scene, Tura is a bounty hunter. She has an assignment to kidnap a hacker who's got some pretty important information on some dangerous people, and it's her job to go in and pull this guy out of a club, and that's what she does in the opening scene.
Awesome.
We're actually going to be trying to raise money for the opening scene with the Indiegogo campaign. From there, we're going to be able to do some really great stuff. So anybody that's interested should go to touragunangel.com. All the information will be there.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you.
Martheus. We
Thank you.
cannot wait to find out more about the movie.
It's nice to see characters that are strong, independent, fighting women. We have a lot of male characters like that. So to play like this really cool chick that is totally in charge, so it's nice to be able to portray that and give women that example.
We could definitely use more badass.
Right? I'm telling you, we need more badass chicks.
Oh, yeah. Well, we look forward to hearing more from you about Tura's production and maybe a few reels.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sounds good.
Great, we can't
Okay.
wait. Thank you for joining us here. I'm Alex Wolf, and this is Rachel Alex, star of Tura. Stay tuned for more.
I don't like this crowd you're hanging out with, young lady.
But Dad,
I don't like this crowd you're hanging out with, young lady.
Dad, I mean,
Witness, if you will, a scene from a movie in which there was bad acting. To no fault of the actors, for which they paid for acting lessons and an acting coach. What they really needed was the Rising Fire Zone.
Welcome back to the In-Frame interview with Matt Martin. Matt, I'd like to discuss a little bit about, or have you tell us a little bit about what it actually takes to maintain the lodge. You know, you build a reputation and then you spend as much time working to keep that reputation as you do just to do anything else. So what do you have to go through to continue to find new important filmmakers, new important films, to find that one more rare film that someone mentions to you? Like when I walked in and said, what was that movie about the killer cats and what I thought was the 70s and turned out to be early 90s TV film? What does it take for you to find this, to acquire these things, to learn about them? Because you seem to know the most obscure details about some of the most random
Give me
things.
like kind of what does it take to run lodge altogether?
What is it? What is a day in the life of Matt as the businessman?
Well, I'll tell you, I think Brian and I both run into basically our job involves three major things. One is the mechanics of a library. Our job is to keep a collection organized and easily found, you know, for people to be able to look through. And you'd be surprised just how much of the day is spent simply re-straightening covers over and over again, which would drive most people quite mad.
Oh.
But part of that, of course, you know, plays to my own taste anyway, and to Brian's as well. We're both very very organized people. We like everything and kind of look to it, and it should be really inviting. So a big part of what we do day for day is just maintenance. Shelving movies, making sure discs are put back at the right points, because you misshelve a disc by its number, it could be a month before we found it. And
Easily.
that's a real
Yeah.
problem.
I mean, you
And
have
we actually have created systems that we call sweeps that involve sending people who are just good enough to be friends of Lodge, that hang out at Lodge, who will come in and say, hey man, is there anything you need done tonight? And I'll say, well, we need a sweep of this section or this part of the backlog.
to pull out the
to
wrong.
look, we need to look for misshelves or mess ups in the system. And as great a job as we do, we still run into that.
Well, you
lot,
have a
so.
catalog of over 32,000.
Well, if we were to count, say, let's put it like this, we have easily
That's
13,000 videotapes. Not many of those move as much as they used to, but they still require at least cleaning, and that is, I mean, even surprising some people wouldn't think of. I mean, to go pull out that many videotapes to wipe off dust every once a year just because
Right.
it will hurt them in time, and a lot of them aren't going to DVD, may never.
Yeah.
And these rare video copies might be the only chance they have of ever getting to the internet. So, the day-to-day maintenance just plays a lot into our lives. Luckily, we enjoy doing this while watching movies. We've grown to love just having a movie on and, shelving
Well,
this
one of the beautiful things about Lodge is you literally do not know what you will walk into. I've walked in and seen The Outer Limits. I've walked in and seen Play Misty for Me.
Yeah.
I've walked in and seen, anime. I've walked in and seen all kinds of things.
It's sometimes it's hard for when we do our show there, because I've got, where we sit and the TV's at, sometimes I'll get lost. Last time we did a show, I think it was Outer Limits. No, we met with some friends up there. It was Outer.
Remain the Same. Up
Yeah,
there.
met with Remain the Same, and Outer Limits was on it. It's one of my favorites, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's very easy to zone out in Lodge.
for people that aren't in Lodge that might watch the show, they don't understand that we're sitting there with a camera there, and a
37 inch.
Yeah.
37-inch screen TV right to the side of it, playing anything from the Three Stooges on.
Yeah, well, one time it was the Three
Yeah.
Stooges, and every time we took a break, I was like, "Shh, be quiet, and watch the Three Stooges." You'll never know. It's a lottery.
It really is.
It's a lottery when we go to do our show there. It's a lottery of what's going to be on. You can't ever guess because
For Brian and I, when we work, it's just, sometimes you'll plan to watch something, but more often than not, you just give yourself over to the collection. You walk around and your eyes hit something that you either haven't seen in years.
Actually, I
or
was going to
something you
ask
wanna
how
watch.
how one of the things you do, and trying to keep on the theme of what it takes to run Lodge, is you pick things and you have them running on your TV at the end of the room there. You have your couch, you have chairs to invite people to literally just
sit down and
hang out.
watch.
Yeah.
Hang out and watch a movie. No charge.
Yeah, just sit down.
You can't take it home, but where else can you go other than a friend's house or your own home where you can sit down comfortably and watch an entire movie? Or 3 or 4 entire movies.
There are people who do that.
And just to provide that is something. And you have to figure, what do I want screening? Who do I want? How am I going to attract people to?
Absolutely.
To other aspects of the collection, maybe. I walk in, I see something I wouldn't think of. Hey, what is this that you're watching?
I actually usually even cater choices of what's screened to, like, say, where we're at. Like, example, if we're sitting on a Friday or Saturday night, I want something on that's got a lot of energy, that often may be something that's familiar to people that they love. And I want to create a sort of environment where if you're there on a Friday or Saturday night or a weekend night where things are happening, so it feels like the same in there. But if you say go into Lodge on a rainy night or a rainy Monday, you'll tend to see that I'm putting in the Twilight Zones.
I was
I'm
going to say,
putting
that's
in
the
Twilight
Twilight
Zone.
Zone.
Yeah.
I'm going gothic with the look of it because to me, I love to kind of make it feel right. And there's
Right.
something, if anybody ever doubted whether your environment can affect your enjoyment of a movie, well, try watching Christmas Vacation in July. It's not the same movie. Why? Because you're not caught up in the
hype
moment and the
of
look and the
everything.
feel of that season and what that movie is supposed to represent.
Subliminal.
Sure, it's just some things are trapped to a certain environment. If it's a sunny 12 in the afternoon, I'm opening the store and it's beautiful out. I feel like opening the door and doing something very colorful and very energetic, maybe even something classic like something that's very visually, enjoyable and very light. Also, I try to be very careful. I can't honestly say it was always this way.
Right.
But these days, when we opened, people originally, there were no kids coming into Black Lodge.
Right.
But years later, here were these, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds coming in my store in 2000. They cut to 2013. They have kids, and they're still coming, but they bring their children. And, we've actually gained a very large following of parents that bring their kids there, which to me, if you had told me that a decade ago, I would have laughed out loud, like, who would bring your child to this nefarious-looking place, which really isn't. In fact, I'm always entertained by the first time someone walks in and they, you can tell when somebody's never been to Lodge. They walk in and they have this pause where they're looking around and they're wondering if it's okay to be here to some degree. Am I safe? I think is what comes.
That's actually one of my favorite things to do. Is sit in the chair next to the desk and just watch people come in and go first time.
Yeah, I usually actually can very quickly disarm anybody's nervousness because I'm quickly like, hey, come on in, I'm Matt.
Well, that's part of what it takes to run the lodge is to be able to know your customers, to be able to offer them choices they might want, to treat them the way they expect to be treated. I mean, that's just typical business sense. What about the research that goes into finding things?
Absolutely, that would be the first phase, as I said, like the mechanics of a library. The second phase of what we do is the part that's basically service to the customer, where we talk to people about movies, regardless of what their tastes or what they want, and we work within those, constructs to make sure that they found something they're looking for. The third phase is acquisitions, the third major thing we do. In the old days, as I said, in the pre-internet days, when we hunted film, you were lucky enough to go to a store, or you found a dying video store and bought out parts of it, or
flea markets,
oh my god, just anything. And it was really, the hunt then. There was something kind of interesting, exciting when you'd come across a garage sale and find Eraserhead on videotape, original printing, and be like, how much is this? 50 cents? Like thinking to yourself, this is like a $500 videotape, it's super rare, I'm guessing on the price, but it's incredibly rare and you find it in a weird way. Cut to today, when the internet popped up, we instantly were like, I remember saying like the first time IMDb became something, the Internet Movie Database, easily the definitive, research point for studying cinema. I mean, it's considered at this point that, but.
And yet, you can't watch films on it.
Well, no. But it's great for research.
Right.
It's linking abilities for research. I mean, we used to have still have it, this giant bookcase of books next to the desk. And that was there for this early time period where if people wanted to ask questions about movies we didn't even know about ourselves, we had some way to research right there and find out what it was. And
well, even that shelf, going back to previous topic, that shelf is an education.
Sure.
There's some essential reading for filmmakers.
It's pretty much
just on that shelf.
The most important books on the subject, yeah. And these days, of course, internet's far more useful. And these days it comes down to, I know enough, weirdly, I think Brian and I have reached a point of being so involved in the business so long that we know what movies are left that we don't have and how we can get them and how much they will cost to do so. Because of that, I couldn't tell you the first time I used like an Amazon Touch app on my iPhone and said, oh my God, here's a rare movie, Touch, it's on its way to Lodge. Suddenly I realized we're in a new phase here where acquisitions will be, on one hand, easier. There's no sort of this darting around from place to place as much as there is spending lots of time on. And of course, like everyone else, we are become dependent upon that to access rare film. And of course, had access in a way we never had before.
Now, you mentioned that because you've been doing this so long, you and Brian both have this ability to kind of know what you have and what you're still looking for.
Sure.
What about new? How do you really
Good
know?
question.
I had heard nothing about Serbian film, for instance, and I'm not trying to condemn or be a proponent of the film, but personally, I had never heard anything about it, and you were able to just give me this impressive analysis of what this film was. How did you even hear about the film? I mean, where do you go to find out about the new important or effective films that are being made?
Something like Serbian film is so radical and so insane and easily one of the most disturbing films any of us will probably have the opportunity to watch.
Absolutely.
It made such a devastation, such an effect on the cinema world that it would have been harder to not run into it.
Okay.
But in most cases, I find that for one, there was always the fact, and this going back to having director sections, if you will. We always chase directors. This has been going on since people actually recognized, hey, wait a minute, usually great movies are coming from these very singular visions. Often, it's a collective vision being realized, but often the spark of this is usually a single person or maybe a couple or something. But my point being is that taught us to track that. Okay, if I love this many Coen Brothers movies, I'm waiting to see what you come up with next. I have a degree of faith that clearly I like you as an artist, and I'm probably going to at least like to some degree anything you would make. So there's that factor, tracking what we call directors, where it's of course tracking older directors and great stuff they've made that is only now getting to DVD, as well as tracking new and up and coming directors. And only recently, when we started, we had a set number of director sections, and I've been glad to watch the careers of people like Darren Aronofsky or Wes Anderson or anybody in that category, P.T. Anderson, who now we get to put up a section for them, and it's like, ooh, new people to track. Obviously, still lots of creative minds making cinema, and will continue to do so, even after we've lost, really important major directors who are of course aging and will go one day and stop making film. Some cases not. Godard's in his 90s. But point being is, tracking that as well as making sure that you read a lot of film sites online and hear what's being seen at festivals, which, these days is very easy to get good listings for everything that's played at Sundance, everything that's played at Cannes. Linking from there, what is that? That sounds cool. What's that interesting? Or what else have they made? A lot of my time, thankfully, I'm always seem to be doing all this at once. I'll be at the desk at Lodge, and I'm making sure movies are going back. At the same time, I've got 6 other people. I'm having them do these tasks, and I need these 2 people doing this cleaning. Meanwhile, I'm on my phone, not only researching what films we might want to get, but I'm also ordering stuff on my phone. I'm also texting late people on my phone. Doing mass text to dozens, sometimes hundreds of people who are overdue, which is just part of the system. It's part of what we got to do. Remind people, come on, it's time to come back. It's a lot of balancing act of a lot of tasks, it seems, but easier to do now.
Well, a lot of people that walk in the lodge see you at the desk and they don't realize. And I mean, I'm glad you asked that question, because they don't know the Matt Martin, the businessman, of what it has to take to run such a place. It
takes 2 for sure.
Yeah,
my partner easily has to do as much as I do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that I know there's a lot of things that I couldn't do without him, and I'm sure that's the kind of relationship that you and Brian have.
Absolutely, a lot I could not do without you. So,
but I could never imagine, because every time that I come in to see you, I sit down with you and I have a conversation with you. It's hard for me to go, you do all of this in one day, in a 12-hour shift.
Not more than that.
Really?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I'll open the store at noon and I'll be on the desk by dawn the next day still.
Really?
Because there's just tons of stuff we can't do while we're open.
One of the reasons that this show, normally live, what we're running this as a recorded show, because your schedule is such with this kind of work that you really aren't able to just sit down and do an interview.
Very rare.
When our first episode, when we started this show, our intention was to, in frame, coming to you from Black Lodge. What is Black Lodge? And we were going to do that whole thing. And we, you were not feeling well.
I remember when I was actually
so
sick.
we went ahead and we kind of ad-libbed our way through and tried to get the critical information out there and really kind of stress to people how important we felt you and Lodge, and we often forget to mention Brian, but of course the quiet partner Brian Hogue, who is an integral part of it as well. And then after that we were going to have our Fire at the Lodge event, when we were going to give you DVDs of all of our work, which we all have lives and that gets away from us sometime, and that has yet to happen. So we ended up here now. It's, to us, almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're conducting this interview because you are that busy. You are putting that much of yourself into providing an institution for local filmmakers.
Yeah.
As one of those local filmmakers, on behalf of
Yes.
my team and you know our partnership and everything we have built so far, and what of course we will continue to build, absolutely without question, our hat is off to you, and we thank you for everything
Absolutely.
you've done to
I think,
create that.
Brian and I have always been just happy to do it. It gave us something we love to do for a long time, and of course, connecting with people, inspiring people, giving people access to a great film collection is fantastic. But at the same time, we say thank you back. I've got to spend 15 years studying film and talking to people about film because people like y'all are good enough to rent. People watching are good enough to come in and spend money that can keep the place going and keep new movies coming in. And I'm believe me, as thankful as anybody.
I do hope that anyone out there that's viewing will keep in mind any when they do their spring cleaning, any videotapes, any DVDs, anything like that you don't want in your house anymore, consider bringing to Black Lodge, because you may not know what you have.
It's true.
This man will. And while you're in there, take a moment, look around, and
You're going to take more than a moment.
it's going to become a second home. It really is an experience in and of itself. Just to walk in that building, it has an energy and a quality to it that really, really begs to be a part of you, to invite you into it. It's a very interesting warmth that you've created.
Well, yeah, I think when we shot, the original look of it was like it needs to be one part like library, one part movie-based opium den looking thing, and I think we achieved that. And the carnival-like look of it wound up being a big draw, I think, for people, which was the
I love that it has the character it has, and I in this day and age, as we see more and more things fade away, I don't look for a day when that ever happens to Lodge. I think that the character that is presented in Lodge is something that's necessary. I think the character of Lodge, in and of itself, could fuel film.
Yeah, it's weirdly, I almost want to say it's kind of grown organically. Like, there might have been a thing or two I think we put on the walls because we thought it would, look cool, but a lot of it was, weird, middle of the night, lots of people were there. Next thing I know, an entire door has become a mural, and next thing I know, it's this bizarre, creepy work of art on my wall that's going to be there forever.
But the whole environment is a living, breathing work of art.
Yeah, I kind of like that feel of it too. It really does feel like the cobwebs in the corner is integral to the look of it.
You are the mad choreographer. You're the mad choreographer behind it all. So well done.
Brian as well.
And Brian.
I mean, he is, believe me, knows his film, and at the same time, I quite remember the name Black Lodge Video actually was his idea. And when we were sitting down thinking up names for it, I can't remember. I think every name I came up with had the word dark. I'm not kidding at all. It was dark this, dark that, dark something video, dark something video. Okay, it was probably my whatever it was now, and he was the one, because we of course were huge fans of Twin Peaks,
right? And
the name of course comes from that, as well as the symbol of the owl that we have tattooed on us, and a lot of other people do too. Yeah, he just said, what if it was called Black Lodge Video? And I remember the moment he said, I was like, that's awesome. Because the lodge thing kind of suggests a sort of place, a repository of wisdom, which was to us the movies.
Right.
And at the same time, the mystique from the show, the idea that the Black Lodge was this place that was in this town and corrupted it by its influence. We thought that was funny. I was like, naming a business after a business from a mythical land in a show that corrupted and destroyed an entire town, and because we thought we would have a lot of esoteric cinema. Of course, we'd have all the big boys and all the important stuff. We also wanted to have a lot of bizarre and interesting and more esoteric stuff. So we kind of knew that we right away might get looked at strangely for that, and it was the late '90s going into the 2000s. So it ain't exactly this age where, post-internet, everybody's like, okay, I cannot be shocked,
Yeah.
There was still that element in the air.
One last real quick question before we cut away from this segment. Does it ever feel like it's gotten out of hand at any point?
Oh my, yes. It sure did. Yes, sir. And yeah, at times even one would say dangerously so.
Excellent. All right. We'll be right back.
Last night, everything was fine.
No, everything has not been fine.
Oh, yes, sir. Good feeling so Phillips. Everybody want to buy Doug. Got Kennedy Baptist Hospital, Ward 24E. Just flat fix and bring you the hottest thing in the country. Real hot and blue. Coming to you through WHBQ in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's Friday night tomorrow.
We're here at the Hotel Chiska in downtown Memphis. It's a 100-year-old building that's being renovated and turned into apartments. We're actually in the mezzanine level, which used to be WHBQ radio station offices. On July 5th, 1954, Sam Phillips records Elvis Presley doing That's All Right with Scotty and Bill. 3 days later, he's given the acetate recording to Dewey Phillips, who has a show here at WHBQ called Red Hot and Blue. Let's go down the hallway and find it. On July 8th, Dewey Phillips tells Elvis and tells Sam he's going to play this song, right? Elvis gets so nervous that he goes to a movie theater. He can't handle what might happen, the rejection that might follow. But the song is so popular that Dewey plays it 14 times out of his room down here. The Presleys are urged to go get Elvis at the movie theater and bring him to Red Hot and Blue because Dewey wants to interview him. And all that happened in this room right here. By the time Elvis gets to this room, he's a nervous wreck. He tells Dewey, I ain't never been interviewed before, Mr. Phillips. And Dewey Phillips says, it's all right, Elvis. What's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a few questions, like where you go to high school and how old you are. Elvis answers all these questions. But what Dewey didn't tell him is that the microphone was on the whole time. And it happened in this room. The conversation that Dewey and Elvis have in this exact room in 1954, July 8th, is the first rock and roll conversation that's broadcast on the air ever. Right now, we need your help to save this room. All these panels, everything is original to 1954. We need to excavate the room, basically, just as it is, exact measurements, the glass, everything, and we need to take it downstairs and create in the lobby a museum piece of the room so that the next time you're in Memphis, you can come in and you can see where the great Dewey Phillips performed Red Hot and Blue and first had a rock and roll conversation with Elvis Presley that night on July 8th, 1954. Please help us in this cause. City of Memphis thanks you.
Oh, taking the blues with piano red. Let's wake up. Well, got a telegram here from Truman. Want to play goodbye and so long. Let's dig that boogie.
Welcome back to In Frame, again with our special guest, Matt Martin from Black Lodge Video. So, the next segment of this show is what I'm calling the Black Lodge family. We know that there is a said script about Black Lodge. Tell us a little bit about the family, the generations of people that have come and gone through Black Lodge, and maybe tap onto a little bit of the script of Black Lodge as well.
I've been lucky enough since we began. Actually, before we began, I was lucky enough that we had a lot of good friends that cared about us, but also cared about the idea of what Lodge could be. Some of them very old friends. My friend Scott Naff, who I've known since I was like 5, he actually, we've been friends all since that time, and he was very integral in the early days. Several other people, I could go on, but a lot of old friends, we were lucky enough to be there at the beginning. and we kind of called them the first generation people. They were there pre-lodge, as we used to call it. And of course, we were happy to see right when we opened, people started showing up that became friends. You know, so people started as customers. Of course, like I said, we had just moved back to the area after being gone for half a decade, so we didn't know many people. It was great to meet a lot of new people, and didn't know Midtown that well yet. So, but I think the both of us really enjoyed the fact we started meeting a lot of great people, and some of them became friends, and some it began to go beyond that. I mean, volunteers was one thing, and believe me, we would have never survived if it weren't for just the large number of volunteers over the years that have given really generously of their time, asking nothing more often than to just have some free movies out of the deal. And I mean hours of work often, just, you know, to help out because they care. I think it took a while for us to see how people will cycle through your life if you're not going to move. Lodge almost exists like a time capsule. It's virtually the same look it had with some additions and obviously a lot more movies as it did 13 years ago. So obviously we've watched a lot of people grow up and come and go. You know, people came around when they were 15, sat on our couch because they were bored or had nowhere else to go, and you know, by the time they were 17 or 18, we knew them well enough. Hey, you want to help me shelve some movies? And eventually they'd take off to college, and that would be the last we'd see them. They go to another state, still friends in some cases, but we'd watch these generations of people come and go, and jokingly I've even said there's been like 6 generations of Lodge people over the years. I'd say if we were to count them all end to end, easily a good like 50, 60, maybe 100 people were dedicated Lodge people at different times, depending on what era of Lodge we were in. In the earliest days, we had a massive building and an upstairs we were using as well, and we would have 4 or 5, and at one time I really remember it was somewhere in the 8 or 9 region of people living in the lodge because they had nowhere to go, they had no money. Friends that had come and volunteered time generously coming to me basically going, look, I got nowhere to live and I don't have any money, and can you help me in any way? And I'd say, tell you what, you know, I got a corner upstairs, you can rest there and save what money you can make, and, you know, we help out at Lodge, and we'll just call it even. And, of course, this turned into a kind of weird family, probably too much so, I'm sure, at times. You know, I wouldn't say it went to Manson family vibes, but definitely, you know, it became a thing where you would go to Lodge, especially in the early days, say 2000 to 2004 or 5 even, where even I would walk in there and it'd be like there's 7, 8, 10 Lodge people there. There came even a point where for 24 hours a day, there was at least 5, but usually more people there because of the people that live there, and of course people hanging on and playing around or just being there all night, and it just became a thing. I'd walk in the door and it's just a dozen people there, and you know, that's when it started to get big, you know, to that degree. It's also the first time we, you know, noticed, like my partner and I jokingly in the opening days had decided to get a tattoo. Both of us would get it right here on our hand of the owl symbol, as it's come to be known, from the show Twin Peaks, that represents the Black Lodge in the show. And we thought that'd be funny, you know, it's right there on our hands. It's kind of like, you know, we'll play into that whole, this place is kind of weird looking, you know, maybe these people are kind of weird. Which, I don't know, I think in the early days both of us thought that would work in an interesting way. And when these people started hanging around, I think we were both kind of flattered as well as just kind of blown away that some of them would start getting the tattoo.
Right.
We finally, you know, at this point, years later, reached a point where I don't even know if I can count how many owls have been put on people. I can say that at this point, there's almost no part of the human anatomy that has not been tattooed by an owl at some point. And I mean that literally. Almost no part. But point being was, you know, I've been lucky enough just to have been made good friends that cared. And, you know, same with Brian, that we made people, you know, came in and helped us out. And if we acted as a sort of place for them to go and a family to be at, that's great if it was that. I think I can remember a few where it really literally was that, you know, people that had come around when they were 17 who were virtually runaways. You know, they had a parent in the city, but the parent was a heroin addict or something like that, and the parent was an alcoholic and hit them all the time, and they'd show up at my door at noon, and I knew why, because they don't want to be at that house anymore, and a new lodge was open, and there's a couch, and at least I can watch a movie, and I'd be like, come on in, you know. Over time, we'd be lucky enough that, you know, if they were nice, they'd stick around and help out.
That's, you know, I don't know if you really think about how important that can be to a young person. You know, cities create all these programs and projects to try and keep kids off the street. And you, without even trying, not only gave these kids that were receiving abuse or neglect a place they can go that is a safe haven, but it is also a place where it can unlock a whole different world to them. The world of cinema.
There was definitely a few cases. Definitely a few cases where that I noticeably noticed.
Well, I remember early days.
People that listen to them.
I remember coming in the early days, and I'd walk in, and BJ would be there, and Kelly Kratt would be there, and whoever else would be sitting around, and there'd be 8 or 9 people in the room, and 3 of them are talking about, maybe I want to write a script. Maybe I want to make a movie. Maybe I want to be in a movie. Several of them may never even get close. Some of them may. But the fact that you provided an environment where they even came across that as a consideration.
And other art forms. I had people come in who'd be doodling in a notebook, and I'd say, you actually draw amazingly well. If you ever want, just come sit on the couch and draw while we watch movies. And cut to years later, watch them become very great artists.
Mm-hmm.
Same with musicians. I remember people coming in and just sitting around and being like, doodling around or carrying a guitar, and I'd say...
From day one, I've heard you encourage people to... you've actually had people play upstairs.
And I got to put it out there for Brian on this one. Brian, whose knowledge of music diminishes mine by huge capacities. On cinema, we're pretty equal. When it comes to music knowledge, Brian's is unsurpassed. And our which we have a very large collection of music DVDs and concerts and documentaries, and I got to say that's in large part to him. I've contributed, but it's been a personal project of his for years, especially here in Memphis.
I'll have to remember to thank him for that.
And he does a great job constantly finding really interesting, rare things from classic jazz all the way to just great modern bands, concerts, interesting documentaries, and. To a degree, I guess Brian, when it comes to essentially acquiring stuff like that, to give credit, he actually acquires all kinds of lots of great stuff too. But I think that in his case, just musicians would come in there often and encounter music stuff they'd never encountered before. So I think we found all kinds of artistic types showing up, crossing each other's boundaries, so-and-so's music winding up in somebody else's movie because they met there. I think, as a place where this kind of environment could be like a family of sorts, and it was that for me too, I'd honestly say. Obviously I've got a good family and lots of good friends, but it's always been great to just keep meeting new people that way. And of course, meeting a lot of strange customers at the same time, a lot of good customers, but a lot of strange ones.
And some of that probably fuels. I realize the script in question would be fictionalized in some ways, in many ways potentially, but I'm sure that you can't have a place like Black Lodge without attracting certain elements. And I don't want to specify. I don't want to actually even clarify what I mean by elements necessarily yet. But I remember when we approached you to do In Frame live from Black Lodge. One of the first things you said was, "Are you sure? You do know that you just never know what will happen in the background."
Which is very true.
Because you have several customers, whether it's chemical imbalance, alcoholism, lack of alcoholism, whatever it might be.
Reasoning.
You have individuals who will come in and you just don't know what you're getting that day.
Oh yeah, it's part of the beauty of it for me. It's just not only do I have this grouping of friends that help out in our own kind of little lodge family, if you will, whatever you want to call that, but then we have this, a cycle of a good chunk of people that come in regularly. I almost get to know their lives, even though we're never going to be friends per se, and some of them are pretty bizarre. I'd say we know more, bizarre people than we do normal, if you will, whatever that word means. But what I'm saying.
What really makes you normal.
But then at the same time, we've got our share of people, that are truly eccentric, and that's always entertainment. We've had incidents. I often think once Brian said, "Why we didn't record every minute of this while we were doing it?" I have no idea, because it's gone so crazy over the years. whether it was just bizarre incidents of, customer came wandering up the street and shows up at my door wearing nothing but underwear and a single sock and walks straight to the, erotica section, picks up a cover and says, can I go in the back? And like, no. Meanwhile, I'm looking over to my right and there's like the family and I'm like, welcome to the next level. And I've often said, we should have a damn sign out front, like, be warned. I can't promise, everyone in here will be okay. But
warning when you enter these doors.
I think we've reached that point where people have like kind of accepted like it's one of those odd places. And I think it's really liked. I think
it's
its
own circus.
People like rich people from way far out who half the time will be like, I just like showing up and seeing the people coming in because it just seems like all these different types of people.
It really is a fantastic carnival of the bizarre. It is a focal point of what exists within Midtown. And then Memphis at large beyond that even. Because like you say, you'll have the yuppie, I guess is what we call them still. Come in from Germantown or Collierville or whatever, and they'll come in their suit and tie. And then Muck Sticky will walk in his pajamas. And then Mike McCarthy will walk in. And then we'll walk in. And then maybe Craig Brewer walks in.
Interestingly, Steve Rubell, who created Studio 54, legendary club in the late 70s in New York, that just is also as legendarily got shut down really bad. But he was really well known for this ability to create a really party environment that always seemed to work well, and which is why Studio 54 took off. I mentioned that because he once said, what most people don't get is that the rich and the conservative actually are dying to play with the trash, the street, the punks, whatever's the outcast or the things they're not used to. They want to kind of be in that environment. And on the flip side, those same freaks, if you will, they like to play and party around the rich and whatnot. And he said, that's the gag. You've got to make sure there's this cross-section constantly going on of the conservative this side and the freakdom, if you will.
Well, that was kind of the precedent, or where the precedent of who the doorman allows in the building.
That's
kind
exactly
of
why they
began,
did that.
because they wanted a certain balance of what appeared in the club.
Exactly. Said a good business like that would be like a salad. It's got to be equally proportionate.
Yeah.
And and I got to think that kind of like that. I always wanted Lodge to be that. It's probably too big a task to say I want this to be something for everybody, but at the same time, like I do try to make it like it's really any type of person could get quite accessible in there and get to kind of hobnob around. And at the same time, I've watched people who would never have spoken to each other in the streets anywhere in the city having a conversation about movies and thinking to myself, at least there's a place where y'all will talk.
Which, it's an art form. Music, movies, fine art, whatever it might be. It's such a subjective thing that no matter what walk of life you might come from, you can still be interested in the same things. There can still be something in that particular Led Zeppelin song, or that particular Picasso piece, or that particular David Lynch movie that appeals to the guy making $30,000 a week or the guy making $30,000 a decade.
Yeah.
They can still come to something artistic and get something from it. They may or may not get the same thing, but they can still have an appeal.
Sure.
And that's common ground. And you've created an environment for film that allows a common ground.
Sure.
For filmmakers, for film viewers, for second and third generation now of film fan. Like you said, you've had people that they were Lodge babies when it opened. And now they have babies, and they're bringing those children into your store. I know you have I can't remember names to save my life, but I know Kendra Zen. I know her as someone who wants to make film that I met years ago through Craig Brewer. And now the little girl I met with her is a semi-regular through your building, creating a second generation in Kendra's family that has appealed to that side of, has opened up to the film world somehow. And it's interesting to see that you've created this place where regardless of age, regardless of taste, regardless of walk of life, there is a place for you in Black Lodge. And when you're in Black Lodge, everybody's an equal.
Yeah, there's something for everyone there. And I'm shooting for that anyway.
And that's what I meant by the energy. And, you know, you may not have every film made. You don't make it a high priority, for instance, to get the next rom-com. Although you have some.
Sure.
It's not a high priority because those are everywhere. I love that your priority is to find the stuff that is harder to find.
And that's the fun for me. I want to see stuff I've never seen.
Yeah, exactly, and that's, you know, you brought up music. For me, that's the same thing I do with music. If I can find it on the radio any time of the day by flipping on the radio, why spend my money putting it in my private collection?
True.
My private collection should be things I can't just go find free and easy. So I love that is the approach that Lodge takes to it. So.
Well, I have to say this. I'm going to have to cut out here soon due to other schedulings, but personally for me, Matt, I appreciate you. I appreciate
y'all caring too, you know. Again, it only works if we're all working it. You know what I mean, it's like,
Amen.
If y'all weren't there, what do I got? I got a collection of movies that I could possibly watch a bunch of, but never, you know. I remember even saying that to Brian, like, what are we going to do if we didn't do this? I mean, I hold on to a bunch of movies till we die and then hope they wound up somewhere. You know, it's like, this needs to go, it's bigger than us. It needs to go to other people. And so I'm really glad that there were people there to share it, that cared, and then, of course, glad to meet people that loved film, wanted to make film, wanted to be involved in film, or even just watch a lot of film. You know, again, thankful for y'all as much as anybody could be thankful for us. I think Brian and I both would say that.
You know, I appreciate you for what you've done. I have been almost mute through this whole thing for a certain reason because
I'm talking too much.
No, it's not because you're talking too much. It's because I'm trying to absorb everything that you're trying to tell everybody else about what it is that you and Brian have done with Lodge and what you have to offer so much to everybody in this town. And I appreciate you because you're a voice that I can come to as a filmmaker. I respect what you say. Might not always agree with everything anybody ever says, but I respect everything that you say. You do give me the inspirations to want to see things that I've never seen before. And I appreciate that. And the honesty that you have with me as a filmmaker and with other people as a filmmaker, you're top notch in my book, man. I appreciate everything that you've done. And with me being as new as I am here, with this community, I look forward to a long friendship with you, a long friendship with Lodge.
I look forward to multiple films from you.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it very hardly. But thank you, and I'll definitely see you again this week, man.
Hell yeah.
We'll be back with a conclusion in just a moment.
Dig! I said dig!
The picturesque hamlet of Bolton, Connecticut. Your typical New England town. However, under its beauty is a tragic history. Meet young filmmaker Pierce Lindale, born and raised. Perhaps you know Pierce's grandfather, the former trooper of the town and a beloved public figure. Pierce's friends have just helped him make a movie, and it premieres tonight. Not everyone is happy about it. This could be the best night of Pierce's life, had he only known. I filmed your death. A portrait of today's youth. Always looking for an escape. Always looking for a distraction. Always, I filmed your death. outside the public access channel. A popular television show personality makes a disturbing discovery when he finds that I filmed your death. 2 intoxicated youths take it to the next level. But when the lights go off, I filmed your death. All of these deaths plus yours, I filmed your death. I filmed your death. Not everyone wants to be in a movie.
And welcome back to our final segment tonight with Matthew Martin. We've talked a little bit about the origins, the beginnings. We've talked about what it takes, what you have to put in to run it on a daily basis. We've talked about the various people that have rolled through Lodge and the different things you've seen there. What about the future? Where do you see Lodge going? And, you know, we see the death of VHS. We're looking at the death of DVD in the future. Looking at everything going digital media. Where do you see Lodge in that, and what other avenues of creative output or ways of preserving and creating that cinema environment are on the mind of Matt Martin?
Speaking for both Brian and I on this one, I think both of us feel we're at a point now where even as mediums are changing, downloadable film clearly a future that goes beyond, you know, the life of DVDs or even Blu-ray, which, you know, will probably die at the same moment as DVD. It won't last longer. Downloadable film will probably alter that so severely, and especially in the next few years. But I think both of us feel like the store will probably continue for a long time. In and of, even like, say, a vinyl record store does, there'll always be a need for what we do, at least as far as we see. So I feel like the future of the store is probably, you know, relatively speaking, intact. You know, assuming all things go our way, it could go on for years. Whether or not we'll both sit behind that counter for the rest of our lives, I'm not entirely certain, but I can tell you I've met good people who work with me who easily know enough about cinema to be an asset to run such a place, or at least be on its desk a lot of the time. And in some cases, I've met individuals whose knowledge of film rivaled my own the moment I met them. Or even more so. You know, there's been those rare few, enough that we said, yeah, someday somebody else will probably run it, but the collection will probably always survive. I think if it couldn't survive as a business, even if it couldn't make enough money to pay, say, its rent, you know, it's the kind of thing you could donate intact to an institution, then it would keep it together.
Is it nice to feel that if you so needed or chose, that there are those individuals out there that you feel the trust in to continue the legacy, as it were?
Well, I mean, somebody's got to do it. I mean, nobody lives forever, and I'm sure Brian and I would love to do it for years to come, and probably will. But on another level, You know, if it's going to go on past that, or if there comes a time where we just want to do something else. I don't know, I get the feeling that him and I would be able to find those right people that could keep doing and bring the energy to it that we had brought. You know, when we started Lodge, we were 24 years old, you know, and it's a thing that can be run by young people, so there might come a day for that. Who's to say? On another level, even if traffic were to slow over time, you know, that's not necessarily something that would just kill a business like Lodge, because it, to be honest, doesn't take much to survive. Really, once you know, pay your rent, pay your utilities, pay your phone, it's just about how much do you want to spend on movies and how much do you want to keep building that. So it could have a future beyond that. There's definitely other outlets I foresee. You know, I'm in the process of transferring a lot of rare out-of-print videotape to DVDRs to begin the digitization of that, so that a lot of stuff won't get lost. And I hope other video stores are doing the same thing around the country. I know a few that are, in fact, doing that.
Do you see a potential future where Black Lodge Video is a .com, much like a Netflix?
We actually talked to people about that, like getting into streaming and what that would cost. Presently, it seemed utterly out of reach just due to the costs that they impose, even on the smallest stream sites. If you're going to stream a certain amount of space, you instantly will draw, is something like, say, locally, something like Comcast would say, you can do that, but you know, if you're going to take up that much space and use that much traffic, we need you to pay this fee, and it's going to be upwards of many thousands a month. So you better come out the gate awesome, or you wouldn't be able to do it. I don't necessarily know if such a thing could ever be done. Even the legalities of dealing with films that are in print, the contracts involved with the rights. So even if you're talking about streaming out of print movies, even that gets its difficulties. I do foresee, at least for my own sake, wanting to digitize the entire collection, just so if we ever had a fire or something, it's like we should have everything elsewhere so it could be saved. And then beyond just the physicalities of the store and the collection, there's other stuff I'd like to do. I mean, I already write scripts and would like to make one. And then, of course, years ago, there was a script written called Black Lodge that was a mythical version, an amped up version of the story of Lodge, just taken to crazy extremes, mostly playing off the weird rumors that had existed for years about Lodge. So, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing if that could get made. I'm sure there is a documentary or a film or both.
There's at least one film
on this, because the story is quite crazy. Again, I've only skirted the most basics of of its history.
It's a 13-year history, and you know, we only have just under 2 hours to cover it all, so we can't really get into everything. And I'm sure, like, you know, everybody's life at one point or another, there are some things you maybe don't want to relive. You know,
sure, I'll have to.
The headaches of dealing with a business, you know, no matter what the business is, it comes with it inherently some headaches. And, you know, they're not always the best things, but over the years, Black Lodge has really become a landmark. And, you know, I tell everyone I know, we chose there to bring this show because it just made sense. And, you know, as an outsider, as it were, I'm not a business partner. I am simply a fan and member of the Lodge family on an extension.
Absolutely.
I see a future where Lodge still exists and maybe has grown beyond what it is now somehow. And I don't know what form that takes, but we hinted earlier, where can you go to watch a movie for free?
Not many places left.
That is something that you offer, and you know, there are no rights to worry about. There's no legalities to worry about. You know.
Not if money's not going to change
There's
anything.
there's no money. That is all handled through the rental, and that's all dealt with.
Sure.
So you have this environment where people can come, and they can enjoy cinema they aren't going to find, you know, in too many other places. Yes. Indie Memphis will be screening Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Sign, but Seal, good Lord, I do that every time.
It's 3 in the morning.
It's one of my favorite films, too, but it is 3 in the morning. But they'll be screening that. I have it in my private collection, you have it in the Lodge's collection, but how many other places, even in just this city, are you going to see that film?
Not unless you go by, and even then, only one place would have it. just sad.
So I think that if nothing else, Lodge will stick around because it's going to be that place where someone can go and see something that they're not going to see at the local cinema, or they're not going to see just anywhere they go. And I personally would love to see Lodge become I guess almost a cafe of sorts, to where the filmmakers and the artists in the community realized what kind of an opportunity Lodge could present them, where musicians can come and they can play live, and artists can come and they can paint or sketch or whatever their art might be right there on the premises, and filmmakers can come and they can meet these people and they can be inspired by the characters that roll through the Black Lodge to create scripts and stories and create sort of that focal point of the modern Renaissance that I've long said I think needs to happen somewhere.
You know, which I believe is kind of happening now. You know,
I have hinted a few times that I think we're at the beginning of that, and in this city, I think that Black Lodge could be a strong focal point for that. And
I know I'll be doing my part to throw it out there for that. You know,
you definitely
people will respond to it. And, you know, even as we speak, being so, you know, if you will, early in the morning, I'm still going back to work. I have several hours left to do, so it'll be kind of like, you know, believe me, I'm going to be doing my part to make sure it's a badass place for anybody who wants to get to movies.
Well, I appreciate
and my partner
that.
will be too.
I definitely appreciate that. And, you know, I don't see Brian often, and I don't know him well, but I know him to say hello to, and you know, we don't talk about him near enough, but of course, you couldn't have done it without Brian. Partnerships are excessively important, and I could not do what I do without Kent, without Jamie, you know, without my wife even. So partnerships are very important things.
Absolutely.
And I do understand that you couldn't do it without Brian, so kudos to Brian, because he is sort of an unsung hero.
You're the man.
That said, Matt, you know, I appreciate you giving us your time. I do know what your schedule is like, and I know what it took for you to be here.
I'm just glad to talk about it. Glad people care to hear about it.
I will continue, you know, we will continue to bring in Frame to Black Lodge and do everything we can to continue to bring different filmmakers, different musicians, different fans of film to Black Lodge, so that more people in this city can discover what it is you have going there, because I think you've got something that burns bright.
It's there for everyone, please. People everywhere. Go out, watch movies wherever you can get to them. Come to us if you need stuff you can't find anywhere.
All right, that said, we're going to say good night. And, well, for us, good night. It is, almost 3 in the morning. Matt Martin, ladies and gentlemen, a man who is hard at work trying to give people like us, people like myself, my partners, a place where we can go and learn our craft and educate ourselves, and I thank you for it.
Glad to be there. Glad to be a part of all of it.
Thank you. And join us next week when we are scheduled to have Chris McCoy and Laura Jean, hopefully to talk about the documentary on the antenna. So we'll see what's up with that. Thank you very much, and have a good week.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hall, director of Cold Blooded. Please join me, the cast and crew, and friends and family for the Tupelo premiere event of Cold Blooded, located at the Malco 10 at Tupelo Commons, April the 11th at 7 p.m. Tickets are only $5, and you're all invited to the after party at Rami's Grocery.
Hey, Christine, want a ride?
Bye, What's in your bag? Is that blood?
is on right now?
I have no idea what we're watching.
I don't even know what this is, but it's hilarious.
Anybody could be bad actors.
Don't like this crowd you're hanging
They
out.
just put anybody on TV these days.
I know. It's like somebody's...
Don't let this conversation be about you. Rising Fire, insurance against bad acting. Be sure you know what you're doing, the choices you're making, before you step on the set.
Oh, yes, sir. Good feeling so Phillips. Everybody want to buy Doug. Got Kennedy Baptist Hospital, Ward 24E. Just flat fix and bring you the hottest thing in the country. Real hot and blue. Coming to you through WHBQ in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's Friday night tomorrow.
We're here at the Hotel Chiska in downtown Memphis. It's a 100-year-old building that's being renovated and turned into apartments. We're actually in the mezzanine level, which used to be WHBQ radio station offices. On July 5th, 1954, Sam Phillips records Elvis Presley doing That's All Right with Scotty and Bill. 3 days later, he's given the acetate recording to Dewey Phillips, who has a show here at WHBQ called Red Hot and Blue. Let's go down the hallway and find it. On July 8th, Dewey Phillips tells Elvis and tells Sam he's going to play this song, right? Elvis gets so nervous that he goes to a movie theater. He can't handle what might happen, the rejection that might follow. But the song is so popular that Dewey plays it 14 times out of his room down here. The Presleys are urged to go get Elvis at the movie theater and bring him to Red Hot and Blue because Dewey wants to interview him. And all that happened in this room right here. By the time Elvis gets to this room, he's a nervous wreck. He tells Dewey, I ain't never been interviewed before, Mr. Phillips. And Dewey Phillips says, it's all right, Elvis. What's going to happen is I'm going to ask you a few questions, like where you go to high school and how old you are. Elvis answers all these questions. But what Dewey didn't tell him is that the microphone was on the whole time. And it happened in this room. The conversation that Dewey and Elvis have in this exact room in 1954, July 8th, is the first rock and roll conversation that's broadcast on the air ever. Right now, we need your help to save this room. All these panels, everything is original to 1954. We need to excavate the room, basically, just as it is, exact measurements, the glass, everything, and we need to take it downstairs and create in the lobby a museum piece of the room so that the next time you're in Memphis, you can come in and you can see where the great Dewey Phillips performed Red Hot and Blue and first had a rock and roll conversation with Elvis Presley that night on July 8th, 1954. Please help us in this cause. City of Memphis thanks you.
Oh, taking a move with piano red. Let's wake up. Well, got a telegram here from Truman. I've been playing goodbye and so long.
Let's dig that